Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Only Run Very Noob, bringing you more Bravo gameplay. For anyone new to the channel, I play Bravo basically exclusively. I'd say I play Guardian exclusively, but Bravo's the only Guardian right now. I played a little bit of Oldhim, a little bit of Starvo back in the day, but basically for over a year, it's been all Bravo all the time. With a little sprinkling of Oldhim. We'll see when the next Guardian comes if it's something that interests me. I definitely really like the hero Bravo. And what we do here is we just play games on Talishar, and I record them, and then in these videos I go back and watch them and commentate on my gameplay, going through the lines, going through my thought process, and just sort of digging into the decision-making process of Flesh and Blood, which is what I like about the game the most. I feel like every turn there's just like a ton of decisions that you can make. There's a ton of things to consider. What you pitch, what you play around, and even like big macro game plan decisions for, different matchups and stuff like that. Today I'm bringing you Dromai gameplay. This is a very polarizing matchup. I think most good Dromai players would say they're heavy favorites. I think most good Bravo players would say they're heavy favorites. It's definitely your classic 90-90 matchup where people think they are way ahead in the matchup, but I honestly think it's very, very close these days. Dromais have more reps into Bravo, so they come prepared with a big macro game plan. They come prepared with the knowledge of what they need to play around, what they need to preserve in their deck through pitch stacking, and their deck is just very powerful. So they have multiple avenues of victory, whether that's using Ghostly Touch or not using Ghostly Touch. And it's one of my favorite matchups, not because I think it's like free or anything, but just because it's so dynamic and it's hard to have a plan that you stick to, because what happens in the game changes so many of your decisions, what armor they present, and just sort of how you start to see them pitch stack and play out their threats. Sorry, they're a little loud outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but they're, doing construction or something. But definitely wanted to record this video. I don't know when they're going to stop, so I didn't want to wait around all day to do this. And I just like bringing you guys content. So without further ado, let's hop into the sideboard here. So I play all my blue cards. I have 39 blues, so I don't really have the luxury of siding out blues. I think 39 blues is kind of where you want to be. Around that number, I would say anywhere from like 38 to 40 is reasonable. More than 40 is kind of a lot. Less than 38, you're pushing it a little. I play all of my poppers, which of course are attacks that have 6 or more power. Their dragons have Phantasm. They even have attacks that have Phantasm, and you want to be able to one card answer those when they allow you to. The only reds I play that aren't poppers are Zealous Belting, which is very good. It allows you to clear 2 dragons. It allows you to pressure life total if you're in a game state that would want you to be doing that. And it's just overall a very good card in the matchup. A lot of times Dromai can play like a Mirror Guy and then a Passing Mirage, and it's a lot easier to Zealous Belting away those 2 threats than it is to, for instance, Rouse the Ancients, those 2 threats. Rouse the Ancients just requires a much bigger hand, and it also kind of feels bad to attack for 7 go again into something that only requires like 4 damage. And the other non-popper I play is Pummel. Not 100% sold on these 3 cards. If I had more poppers, I would play them. I just don't have room in my list for that. So it's in the deck over something like Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, or Sigil of Solace. I actually want to test out Sigil of Solace. I've played it before over Pummel, and I thought it was pretty good. The thought process behind Sigil is that it's a non-popper that you just never clunks up your hand, right? Like, sometimes Pummel, you end up needing to pitch it or block with it, and it's just not great. Where Sigil, you can always just play it. Sometimes you don't even get an opportunity to block with Pummel. You either have to like keep it in your hand or pitch it, and that's where it's at its worst because you don't want to be drawing your non-poppers during second cycle if you can avoid it. And Sigil just never gets stuck in your hand, right? You can just always play it, gain 3 life. And I think for that reason alone, it's worth looking at. It's also decent to kind of counter arcane damage if they Tomel tie away your boots and you're in a long game. It's just overall, it's like a fine card. I don't think it's ever going to be like super good. I don't think it's ever going to be like super bad. It's just kind of like a non-popper that you can get out of your deck for second cycle. The game plan into Dromai I had mentioned before, it's pretty fluid. So a lot of times if I see Ghostly Touch in like a deck that's like 68 cards or something crazy, I just like to go aggressive and sort of put the onus on Dromai to counter your aggression, draw their defense reactions when they need to, and like weather that storm. But one thing I like to do when I see maybe a smaller deck out of Dromai and no Ghostly Touch is to just commit to full fatigue right off the bat and sort of make them have a good endgame plan for fatigue. I don't think them just running Remembrance is enough. I think they really need to do a bunch of stuff and go like way over the top. So that's definitely a strategy I like doing. So we'll just get in the game here. I guess show my equipment real quick. Pretty standard. Anothos, Crown of Providence, Tectonic Plating, Crater Fist, and Norrund Boots. Norrund Boots I like to bring because if you're on the fatigue plan and you don't have Norrund Boots, you're probably not on the fatigue plan, right? Like you can't, they can just like get you to 12 and guarantee to deal 12 arcane damage over the course of the game pretty easily, maybe even higher than that. If they have multiple Burn Them Alls and Asvalize and you don't have Norrund Boots, you basically are stuck doing the aggressive game plan. Anothos over Fist and Buckler. Buckler is just like armor block's not fantastic against them. It's fine, like because they're gonna attack you with Kyloria without Phantasm. A lot of them run Snatch, so your equipment that you have is good, but I don't think it's super high value. And having a weapon that attacks for a little bit more is high value for clearing stuff like Uvia, or maybe even Tomel Tie if they can attack with that thing without Phantasm, right? You just need to kill that thing immediately. And also just in the aggressive game plan, it's +2 damage on your Rouse the Ancients and your Zealous Belting. And it's also just like more damage even when you're just hammering for 6. So I think Anothos is definitely the play. I've heard some people that bring AB2, not because they can deal 2 arcane damage to you, but because they're going to destroy your Norrund Boots with Tomel Tie and they want to still have the Norrund Hood. It's something to consider and look into if you're really favor the fatigue sort of plan. Tunic, honestly, I haven't really considered it. It might be fine because the games do go long. Even when you're aggressive, the games go long, so Tunic might be like reasonable. I just like to have some armor for the reasons I stated before. They're going to attack you with a Kyloria without Phantasm like a couple times a game, and being able to stop those breakpoints with the armor you have is nice. So as you can see, the sideboard plan is sort of a hedge because I'm not sure if I'm going to be aggressive or fatiguey. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. They only have 60 cards, and they have Seeker's Mitts over Ghostly Touch. So right off the bat, I'm thinking I want to fatigue them. I want to preserve poppers in my deck. I want to get the non-poppers out of my deck first cycle, and I want to kind of clunk up their hands with Fate Foreseens and Sink Belows, which means don't attack them that much, just attack their dragons. Normally with a hand like this on the play, I would just dominate Crippling Crush and be off to the races. But if I'm committing to a fatigue plan, I really don't think I want to do that. I think I would rather get the Showtime out of my deck um, rather than pitch it. And then maybe I can throw a Crippling Crush undominated next turn off of like 2 blues or something like that. So here I'm definitely just going to make a Surge and play the Showtime. The Showtime's just probably going to tutor up a blue because I already have the Crippling Crush that I want for Arsenal. And then I'm just going to Arsenal Crippling Crush. So yeah, I get the blue that I guess I want to draw the least, which is Buckling Blow. I believe that's like the worst crush effect. It's pretty negligible though. If you get blue Chokeslam or blue Debilitate or whatever here, it's like probably going to be the same thing. Especially pitch next to Thunderquake and Disable. Even if we do eventually throw a blue attack, the one we tutor up isn't going to be the one we throw. We're probably just going to throw Thunderquake or Disable that is getting pitched next to. They activate their Seeker's Mitts to make an Ash, which is pretty standard from them. Our hand here has the 2 blues that we need to throw the Crippling Crush. The Rouse the Ancients would be pitched in between attacks that could turn it on. We have Thunderquake, Disable, Buckling Blow, and then it's going to be pitched next to like another Buckling Blow here. So that should be fine. Getting the Rouse the Ancients out of the hand is also probably fine, just so, like, it's a good attack, but in the full fatigue plan, it's probably just going to end up blocking 2. Like, so having it in the pitch stack isn't as good as just like having as many poppers as possible. This pummel is pretty ugly here. It's probably just going to be used to block 2. And then we're probably going to pop with Starstruck if they give us an opportunity to pop. Of course, they don't have Ghostly Touch, so popping basically has no downsides. And they just rake the Embers and send in, so we actually get to keep like our whole hand here. If Showtime gets us a blue, we can like pummel the Crippling Crush, which is quite good. And I think that's what we're going to end up doing here. Because of the Surge, we have enough to make a Surge. Because Crippling Crush and Pummel cost 6 plus 2, 8, and then 3 blues makes 9. You can see here I'm kind of thinking about just dominating the Crippling Crush and saving the Pummel. But I think getting the Pummel out of the deck is actually like good on a fatigue plan. We're not even like looking to leak a bunch of damage here. We're just trying to like sort of fatigue their hand through attacking them and get the Pummel out of the deck. We don't want it clogging up our arsenal, because if we're on the fatigue plan, we're probably going to be blocking a lot. And just hoping that he doesn't have a ton of sink below Fate Foreseen type action here, because if he does, this is probably one of the only turns of the game he's going to be able to get a lot of value out of that. Because of course we're going to be attacking mainly dragons. Kind of nice we get him to block with a Dromai. That's one of their premier threats, especially now with Dromai Ash. I think a Dromai with a Dromai Ash under it is like enemy number 1. I think you attack that before you attack Mirror Guy. They have a Sand Cover. And unfortunately, I do believe they have another defense reaction here, which means we don't actually get to fatigue them any cards other than, you know, the ones that they blocked with, because they can activate Furnace here because they played a red card, which is pretty good for them. They end up only taking 1 damage. Not that the damage was really what we were trying to do here. We were just trying to get them to discard like a card or 2, hopefully, but we don't even get that. They had 2 defensive 0-for-4s in the Sand Cover and the Fate for, which is about as bad for us as it could be. Because we definitely want those still in his deck to clog up his draws when we start just attacking dragons. We're just going to block with Command and Conquer, and we're going to dominate the Spinal Crush. He doesn't even have any dragons for us to attack here, and he has no arsenal, so the Spinal Crush has a very high chance of likelihood of landing. Of course, you could have another Sink Blow or Fate Foreseen or Sand Cover, and then use equipment. Oh, notably, I should say something about his equipment. He's not running the Crown of Dominion. He's on Crown of Providence, so that means he doesn't have Tome in his deck, I guess. So that's another reason for Fatigue to be very good here. E-Strike for 7. We have 2 non-poppers that we can just block 6, and we're quite happy to do so. And then on our turn, we're going to make a Surge and then attack with Hammer for 6. No dragons for us to attack into, but that's fine. There's even a chance that we transition to a non-fatigue plan, like a more aggressive plan, if he ends up taking like 6 here to try to set up a board or do anything sort of out of line like that. This hand's a little bad. 3 non-poppers. We'll see what he develops and how he chooses to attack here. Get a little lucky. He attacks us with an attack, so we just get to block with 2 of our non-poppers. If he would have just attacked with Kyloria, that would have been like way worse for us. And then here we can just hammer into Kyloria and then Arsenal the Pummel. And I think we just have like a ton of poppers pitched to the bottom. I think we've pitched like 1 non-popper or something like that. Another 3 non-popper hand. Pretty unfortunate here. But we'll see. He doesn't have any dragons. Only 1 Ash. So he plays Mirror Guy and attacks with Mirror Guy. I think just blocking with like Imposing Visage is good here. Just get a non-popper out of hand, make it so we don't have to pitch it, and kind of see what his follow-up is. He comes in with an E-Strike for 7, which I do believe I'm just going to block for 5. This is where having the Pummel in Arsenal is kind of bad, because we'd really like to park the Zealous Belting in Arsenal instead. But we're not going to use Crown to like put a Pummel in our deck. We're just going to try to use our Pummel when we can. But this is one of the reasons why Pummel is not a great Pummel, like a Arsenal target, because it's just sort of mid. Like, I'm not really happy about it here. If it was Sigil, we could just like play it in Arsenal or Zealous Belting and be a lot happier about the situation. Even before, when we pummeled our Command and Conquer, if it was a Sigil, we could have just like dominated our Command and Conquer. Not that it would have hit. He had Sink Blow and Fate Foreseen, but we could have just like dominated our Crippling Crush and then Arsenal the Sigil and like got rid of it when we needed to get rid of it. So what otherwise might seem like a pretty good Arsenal card in Pummel is really showing why in this matchup it's not the greatest, especially when we're on sort of a slow, grindy plan. And I said I was going to block 5 just with the Zealous Belting just to get it out of hand, but I actually think pitching it is fine because it's going to be pitched in between 2 poppers. It's going to be turned on when we draw it later, and we don't need our hammer to beat a 6 to kill Mirror Guy. So I actually think this is fine. I think this is probably better than blocking 2 with it. because late game we'll have the Zealous Belting in case he pitch stacks some sort of double dragon turn that we need to clean up. Ooh, another sort of ugly hand. 3 non-poppers, 3 turns in a row. If we can get through these, we got through the first 2 pretty nicely though, and if we can get through this one, we can expect to not draw so many non-popper heavy hands in the future, because with 36 poppers in the deck, that's only 24 non-poppers, and 3 hands of 3 non-poppers is already like 9 of those 24 cards. We catch kind of a break here. He just plays a dragon and develops a Dromai Ash, and we get to pitch Crippling Crush for Zealous Belting. Of course, we're going to have to pitch another blue because it's the only card that turns on our Zealous Belting. But then we're going to get to pummel our Zealous Belting and then still hammer for 6, which is quite nice because it's like 2 plus 2 plus 3, right? So 7, then 2 blues and a red is 7, which clears our arsenal. It's a little unfortunate we're pitching 2 non-poppers at the bottom here, but they're going to be separated by the Crippling Crush. So it's not like we're going to draw like a 3 non-popper hand. And there's a chance that this pummel's like a little devastating for him, either dealing a bunch of damage and getting a card out of hand, or just demanding like a bunch of cards. Like, I don't imagine he can just like read the pummel here, so it's probably just going to get him. Even if he blocks 3 and has a defense reaction, he's still going to take 2 and have to discard a card, and then the hammer for 6 is going to hit for 3. And at this point I'm thinking, okay, if he just takes 9 here, my plan was to just hammer down the Yenderai, but if he wants to take damage here, I think I'm going to hammer face. We're up 14 life, and if he takes another 6 here, that's quite poor for him. Oh, it looks like I just hammered Yenderai. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to hammer face here. Maybe I'm committing too hard to the fatigue plan, but when he takes all this damage, I mean, putting him to 15 here allows us to change our game plan. So that might have been a slight mistake, and like a, what do I want to call it? Just sort of like tunnel vision on the plan to fatigue my opponent. Because with a hand like he has here, I think he absolutely would have taken 6 to play Dromai into Mirror. And that 6 damage we would have got, I think, is better than the 3 damage we prevent from him having the extra dragon on board here to attack us. It would have opened up our options. We could have still been on a fatigue plan if that's what ended up being better for us, but it would have opened up the alternative route of just like going super aggro into them. So the Dromai on the Dromai Ash, like I said earlier, I think it's a higher risk than just the Mirror guy. Unfortunately, I have a bunch of poppers that I don't really want to block with, so I think I'm going to take 2 and then block Dromai for 3, begrudgingly with a popper, even though it won't pop. And then on my turn, I can make a surge, hammer down the Dromai, and then arsenal like Command and Conquer or Spinal Crush. Probably Spinal Crush. No, maybe not. Maybe Command and Conquer? No, I think I want to pitch the Command and Conquer. Let's see what I end up doing here. A lot of times when you're on a fatigue plan, pitching Command and Conquer for late is good, because if they have a bunch of sinks and fates that clog up their hand and they need to pitch, having those Command and Conquers still in deck late can be kind of good. So taking 2 is definitely what we want to do here. And I don't think I want to take another 3. I think I'm checking to see how many pummels I have left to see if I want Command and Conquer in Arsenal or Spinal Crush in Arsenal. I think blocking with a blue is better than blocking with a red here. It keeps a blue in the deck. So yeah, he has all these action points, but with no board, he just can't do too much with it. He does have 2 really good threats on the board that we can't kill both of because we don't have a Zealous Belting. which is a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. And yeah, I think there might be like lag happening here, so I just refreshed my browser, and yep, it was waiting for me but not letting me pass. And then I just hammer down the Dromai, and I do end up pitching the Command and Conquer because having them in the deck late is good, I think. And then I just Arsenal Spinal Crush. Spinal Crush is a better threat on its own, while Command and Conquer is a little bit better late once his deck might have a bunch of defense reactions still left, due to us not attacking him, only attacking dragons and not letting him use them. Let me just rewind a little bit on this turn. He attacks us with a non-phantasm attack. We use our non-popper on it. That's the most efficient, best way to use your non-poppers. Mirror Guy doesn't have phantasm, so we just let it hit. And he Command and Conquers us here, which is a little unfortunate. I don't want to use 2 poppers on the Command and Conquer. I don't mind using Crown though, because we get a popper back in our deck. So I'm probably going to block with a card and Crown, because I don't want to take 4 if I don't have to, especially because on my turn I'm just clearing Mirror Guy, so I'm not going to need like a big hand. Ooh, don't press pass. Block with a card. Yeah, take a little bit less damage, since on your turn you're just going to have to clear the Mirror Guy anyway. And don't let Command and Conquer take multiple poppers, so yeah, we gotta sync that arsenal to preserve our poppers. It's the most important thing on the fatigue strategy, is to just make sure you have enough poppers in the end game that they don't like ever get you. We're going to Arsenal Chokeslam instead of the Command and Conquer here. Yeah, for the same reasons I pitched Command and Conquer last turn. It's just going to be pretty good late, I think. And then we do Arsenal and Chokeslam. Arsenaling a Chokeslam without Crown does drain us of a popper. So that's something that might be not the best. Maybe it was just like a threat that I could get down there if he ever gives me a chance. Like if he ever just like develops a board that I don't want to attack into, which I can't imagine would ever happen. Maybe he develops like a Dromai Ash and I get to play it. But I think keeping it in hand just to like have that extra popper is probably better. They develop a Passing Mirage, so they do develop a card, but it is a card we have to attack, so we can't really like pummel the Chokeslam here, which would be kind of nice. We do pitch deck the pummel next to the Command and Conquer though, which is a little cheeky. And then we just keep 2 poppers in our hand, which might have turned out to be very good because we draw 2 non-poppers. He pitches a Fate Foreseen. And we got a couple of those Command and Conquers on the bottom of our deck, which is exactly what I wanted to have happen. And they develop a Dromai Ash. We have an Imposing Visage though, so I think we can just Imposing Visage for showtime. We have a good pitch stack with like a ton of poppers like in a row. But I think our popper density is so high that we just don't really mind shuffling here at all. And I probably click on my graveyard to do something like that, to like check how many poppers I have left. I could also just swing into Kyloria and be happy with my pitch stack, which is going to come up in like the next 5 turns. Yeah, it looks like that's what I do. Just swing away Kyloria, keep the Imposing Visage in hand to hopefully block a normal attack that doesn't have Phantasm. I actually don't mind playing Imposing Visage here though, just because it would clear 2 non-poppers out of the deck, and the popper density is so high that I think shuffling is like reasonable. It would mess up my Command and Conquer pummel pitch deck though, Because, yeah, here's our graveyard, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Only 6 poppers in there? Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 non-poppers. So we only have 13 non-poppers in our deck, or even 12 because we have one in our hand, and it would go down to 11 if we tutored a Showtime. So yeah, I think playing the Imposing Visage there would have been like fine. It would have been pretty good because our popper density is so high that the likelihood we get like a three non-popper hand is pretty low. They play a Command and Conquer, and I think we just block 6. We have to use one popper, but we get to get the other. We get to get the non-popper out of our hand, which is nice, and know that their turn just doesn't get to continue. Although they had 2 instants in hand, so they get to do stuff with their last 2 cards. And here's kind of a crazy thing. I think I do this here. I make a Surge, and then I hammer. Instead of playing the Chokeslam, and I just hammer an Ashwing. Like, I'm hard committing to fatiguing here. One Ashwing could deal quite a bit of damage in the long run, and I believe from my current position that I'll be able to fatigue quite easily. Every sort of big turn that they get, or every sort of turn that they get where they get to play like Dromai Mirror Guy and just like attack with their board, is made way worse if they just don't have a board, right? I just block with Zealous Belting here just to preserve my life and hard commit to full fatiguing them. Maybe I could have taken 2 extra damage and then had a Zealous Belting turn, but I probably would have just attacked 2 Ashwings with the Zealous Belting, so it's not like really... I think the 2 life saved is better than that. Demiraging Metamorph, which we're just going to pop. They can't like copy the Dromai Ash, it only copies auras, so they don't have a Burn Them All on the board, so we're just going to pop that, and then we're going to hammer down another Ashwing. Which definitely looks interesting. That's 12 damage that could have went face, that maybe would have fatigued more cards out of their hand. But if they have like Fate Foreseen and Sink Below, I just don't want them to get value out of those cards. Same thing here. We have a Rouse hand with a Surge. We could Rouse in the Chokeslam, and I know that's very enticing to a lot of people, but I'm hard committing to fatigue, so I'm just going to block the Sweeping Blow with the Rouse, just turn it into 2 life. Get the non-popper out of my deck. And we're going to pop this. And I believe I hammer down his last Ashwing here. Something we could have done is just like Chokeslam his face from Arsenal, but yeah, I don't want to give his Sink Belows any value unless I literally have nothing else to do. And I want to clear his board as much as possible. So if he has like Sink Below and Arsenal, you know, Sand Cover, Fate Foreseen in hand, he just doesn't really get a lot of value out of this at all. We draw 3 non-poppers, a little unfortunate, but we're just going to unmovable this thing. Pitching the Rouse the Ancients. As it is the popper that actually, non-popper that does something second cycle, where Imposing Visage is something we'd probably like to block with here if we're allowed to. So yeah, I just blocked 3. There is a chance I could use armor here, but I think I'd rather wait until he has Kyloria without Phantasm or Snatch or something. Make an Ashwing. It's kind of unfortunate we don't have the blue to just immediately hammer down the Ashwing, but we're going to make a Surge and put the popper back in our deck and just kind of move on. They don't even make the Ashwing, so that's very interesting, and that's like super telling. If they don't make an Ashwing here, it's because they don't want us to hammer the Ashwing, right? It's because they probably want to get like a Sink Below out of their arsenal. So it's actually kind of clever but we don't have a blue, so we just we keep that card stuck in their arsenal there. Here's a burn them all. We're gonna pitch a popper here to prevent 2 arcane damage from the burn them all and the Asvali, and then we're gonna pop the Asvali. And we don't want Warmonger's Diplomacy in our deck, so we're just gonna play it. We're gonna make a Surge with Thunderquake, and then we're just gonna play Warmonger's Diplomacy, preventing them from developing and attacking this next turn. You can't see our deck, but here let's like shrink this for a minute, and you can see we have 31 cards in deck and they have 23. So we're not getting fatigued here, I don't think. So we just have to keep pauper density high so that they can't like steal a game late, and just continue to clear their board and keep our life total high. And I think we're gonna cruise to an easy, slow victory here. Okay. Hold up. So, sorry, I had to go check on my cat. She was screaming. So, they choose war, as do I, of course. And then they just pass the turn. Very interesting. Their hand must just be absolutely clogged with defense reactions. Knowing that, like, is there a world where I just like pass the turn again? Maybe that would have been like the super heads up play. Because if they didn't do any, they chose war, and then they do nothing. So like, what could their hand be? If they have any dragons, they probably would have just chose peace to develop them. I don't know. So I probably end up making a mistake here, but I just have like a free Rouse the Ancients turn, so I go ahead and do that. I just rouse. Probably giving them an opportunity to clear defense reactions here, which might have been poor. They just take 7. Very interesting. And then we hammer for 6, keeping a pauper in hand. I think I should just make a... Oh, I can't make a surge because I'm under Warmonger's Diplomacy, of course. So his arsenal was sink below. But what could his hand be if he didn't block my Zealous Belting? I don't know. So we're coming up to pitch stack, and I think we just have like infinite paupers. Okay, he's got Chromai, Asvali, he's going on the Chromai Ash, and Miragai. So why didn't he just choose peace and like develop all these things last turn? Don't know. Maybe because he didn't want to just give me a free turn of attacking them. I guess that makes sense. I'm not a Dromai player. I only play against Dromai, so maybe that makes sense. Because he should know his pitch stack as well. And we are going to prevent the arcane damage. We do end up blocking just because I want to keep my life total high. And I think I have just like infinite paupers in my deck at this point. We pitched the yellow for the burn them all because we knew we were going to get this Asvali to prevent that arcane damage as well. And then we're just going to pop that. And then on our turn, we're going to hammer down the Chromai. I'm not 100% sure what's the bigger threat, the Miragai or the Chromai, but the Chromai feels like a bigger threat to me. Because if they attack with Chromai and I can't pop it, they just have like 2 action points and can play like Dust Up or something, or like Embermaw Senpai Dust Up or whatever. It just gives them a lot more options to do things, where the Mirror Guy just kind of takes away Phantasm off the first one. And Mirror Guy's effects don't stack, so if they play another Mirror Guy, it's kind of like a wasted thing. Where if they play another Dromai, it could be pretty scary if they have attacks in hand. We still have the Choke Slam in Arsenal, I believe. And here, with a Zealous Belt, this Zealous Belting we pitched, I think there's a chance we just take this damage, looking to pop and then play a Zealous Belting on a Mirror Guy and then whatever. Probably Mirror Guy into Asvali, because I don't imagine they'll allow us to pop this Mirror Guy. But if we prevent arcane damage here, we're not going to have enough cards to play the Zealous Belting. So we're just going to take this damage, take another 2, saving our equipment for something a little bit bigger. And they play Miraging Metamorph, which is kind of nice because we have a non-popper we can just use to block. But it is a lot of damage. We don't want to pop it because we don't want to give them another Burn Them All. And I believe I saw him pitch a Tumultai earlier. I'm not 100% sure. When I was playing the game, I think that's what my thought process was. So there's a chance I want to block with armor here just to preserve life so that I don't get my boots Tumultied and then lose the arcane quite as easily. If I use the equipment, I will also be able to stop a Kyloria without Phantasm twice with the breakpoints. Yeah, so I think I like blocking with the Showtime and the equipment just to preserve life. Don't really want to pop this and give him another Burn Them All. Although maybe it would be fine because we could still just pitch like a blue to double Burn Them All. Yeah, I'm counting his reds here. Yeah, maybe popping this is fine because then we get to preserve more equipment. I think I was just overthinking how much value the Burn Them All is. So I think this might have been a mistake. But at the end of the day, it preserves a popper as well, so how bad could that really be? And then we get to just clean his board up completely here with Zealous Belting and Hammer. Nope, not Choke Slam. Misclicked that one. Zealous Belting. Just keeping that board clean so that if they ever do like have a turn that we can't stop, they just can't threaten too much after it. Pitching a Sink Below, they definitely have a few of those defense reactions left in their deck. Attack with Ravenous Rabble, we're going to block with a non-popper. Taking a point, they're going to attack with Ashwing, we're going to block with Command and Conquer. The reason we're blocking with Command and Conquer is because it wouldn't allow our hammer to be for 6, and we do want to kill this Uvia. And you see this strategy just sort of makes them beat you. Like, if they don't have a big board, sometimes it could be pretty hard for them. They really have to find a way to stick something on the board for multiple turns to generate some value. Because they only have 19 or like 20 cards left with 15 in deck, 5 in hand. And they got to find 18 damage out of those 20 cards. They still have all their equipment up, but it's just not going to matter because we're not attacking them, right? Here's our pitch deck Command and Conquer Pummel, but we're not going to use it. We're just going to like block with it. Plays a Rake the Embers. Make some ash with a burn them all. Creates a mirror guy. Then attacks us with mirror guy. And I think I'm just going to block this with pummel. Oh, I should prevent this too, because I can just pitch Command and Conquer to prevent an arcane. Block with pummel to prevent 2 damage. They attack with Ashwing. I pop it with Spinal Crush, and then I hammer mirror guy down with our remaining blue. I feel like they've had a card in Arsenal for a very, very, very long time. Probably a defense reaction, which isn't going to get much value here. Because we definitely have a lot of things that we can hammer down for the next few turns. And with their deck size, I think they just don't have too many turns left. And I think we just have plenty of poppers. Here I am counting my poppers just to make sure that I don't have anything to be afraid of. And I'm pretty sure, like, out of the 23 cards in my deck, like 18 of them are poppers or something crazy. Have an unmovable. I think they have an E-Strike left in their deck that we could probably use this unmovable on. It might have been nice to clear out our Chokeslam from Arsenal at some point, which we could have. And just like left an Ashwing. They make a bunch of stuff here. But we just have all the poppers we need. I think I want to kill Uvia, so I don't think I can prevent this damage because I gotta pop twice and then have 2 cards left to attack for 6 into the Uvia. Uvia is a threat that makes more threats, and with this plan we just want to like deplete their deck of threats, right? But they do have kind of a big board. They're going to have a Kyloria on board, so if they can develop a mirror guy, that might be a little scary. We're going to have to use our armor. Yep, they have Mirror Guy. Pitching that Enlightened Strike, so we can maybe try to plan to use our Unmovable on that, although we have more cards in deck, so they'll probably hit their Enlightened Strike before we do. Don't know what's in their hand, so a little hesitant to just prevent a damage here. I think I was looking for Chromais, because they could really punish us with a Chromai if we pitch here. But I think 2 Chromai in Graveyard, 1 Chromai in Banish. And we can just stop this Kyloria and then look to pop something and then attack the Mirror Guy. But they play Passing Mirage and Remembrance. Let's see what they Remembrance back here. Remembrance back Mirror Guy, and Dominia. So we sort of have a decision here to make of what we want to destroy. First inclination is I sort of want to destroy Kyloria because it's like a threatening dragon, and if they just don't have any more threatening dragons, like Mirror Guy and Passing Mirage aren't crazy, like we can just end up blocking and then dealing with it later. But Passing Mirage doesn't only apply to dragons, it also applies to attacks, and if they just play like a Miraging Metamorph without Phantasm, that's pretty scary too, because it's just 7 damage, and we don't want to be taking a ton of damage. So I think we just got to get rid of the Passing Mirage. We only have one more armor to stop the Kyloria without Phantasm here, which is a little scary because they could have easily drawn another one of the mirror guys that they just shuffled back with Remembrance. It's pretty likely with their deck only having been 14 cards when they drew up. Play another Burn Them All. I'm going to attack with Kyloria. And I'm just going to prevent damage because they didn't get any Chromais back, and I think that's really the one that could punish us the hardest. And they play another Passing Mirage, activating Furnace with Sink Below. So that plan has come to fruition where their deck is kind of clogged down with these defense reactions that they just can't get any value for because we're not attacking them. And with their board the way it is, we're not going to be attacking them for a very long time. So now we have to deal with this Kyloria without any armor. And that kind of sucks. And play another mirror guy. What's normally a huge threat, and this late in the game, and with one already on board, isn't really doing a whole ton. So this Kyloria, I think, is just going to draw a card. I don't think I want to put 2 cards in front of it just to prevent them from drawing a card. It's a high likelihood that the card they draw isn't even that great. But that would also indicate I don't want to prevent damage. So I am preventing damage? I think that might have been a misplay. I think just blocking the Kyloria with 2 cards is better than preventing damage, but maybe I want to keep my Pauper density high. Even though the Pauper density is already incredibly high, this is just kind of like an extra card for fatigue purposes. Because, yeah, I think just not letting them draw that card is better than preventing the 1 damage by pitching. Ravenous Rabble gets us here. That might have been the card they drew. So I think that might have been a big mistake that cost us 4 life. But of course, when they give us an opportunity to pop, we're just going to pop. And yeah, look at this. Sink Below and Fate Foreseen. So their endgame is pretty clogged down with reactions that are just not going to matter. And here, since he has 2 mirror guys, we just attack Kyloria. Like, that's a very easy decision. We don't want to have to deal with that problem next turn. And we have so many cards more in deck that we can just... The dragon without Phantasm, we can just block it and then pop and then just keep killing dragons. He pitches a Warmonger's Diplomacy next to his Sink Below and a Fate Foreseen, and those cards late are just like not going to do anything. Yeah, we can even pitch to prevent the arcane damage here. And I think we just block with this Dust Up. Yeah. Let him make another Ashwing if he wants. It doesn't really matter at this point. Just hammer down a mirror guy, and I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory endgame here. He does have an E-Strike though, which could leak a little bit of damage, so we got to be mindful of that. We draw an Unmovable though. So we draw our Unmovable when he draws his E-Strike, which is quite fortunate. We get to block it for 5. Swings with Yendrai without Phantasm. I think we do just take 4 here, because now we're going to pop the next dragon and then attack a dragon. And their deck is like Sandcover, Fate Foreseen, Sink Below, Warmonger's Diplomacy, and whatever they put to the bottom with the E-Strike. Attacking Mirror Guy because we can't attack Yendurai for 6, and that's how much damage it would take to kill it, of course, because it has the prevent 3 damage counter on it. And here's that Dominia he shuffled back. It doesn't have Phantasm, but we're just going to block 3. He's going to banish a card. We're going to block 3, and then on our turn we're going to hammer the Dominia. And not too much he can do from this board state, I don't think. Unless he has like double Ravenous Rabble left in his deck, but I don't think he does. I think he might have 1. And it's just not enough. Yep, thank God Dominia only has 4 health. And force him to beat us with his fairly mediocre hand. We have 11 cards left, the 5 in our hand and arsenal and 6 in deck. And I think that Rouse the Ancients is the only non-popper in it. Plays a sand cover just to give it go again. But if the only thing he can attack with is Dragon anyway. Oh, he Warmonger Diplomacy us? Well, we're just going to pick War. And we're going to just hammer Yendurai for 6? Maybe Mirror Guy? Oh no, we'll just hammer Mirror Guy because then we could just pop Yendurai, right? That's his last Mirror Guy. Yeah, that makes sense. Over pitching because why not? Doesn't really matter what we pop with here. The game's over. Notably, we are at 4 life, which is quite low. So keeping our life total high was pretty important this game. Like we blocked 2 with like Pummel and Zealous Belting a couple times, and those life points really helped out. We also blocked 4 on the Miraging Metamorph because we didn't want to give him a Burn Them All. And maybe that ended up being fine, but I think it probably hurt us because it allowed that Kyloria to hit. Because they got to swing with a Kyloria without Phantasm 3 times instead of just the 2 that we could cover up. So yeah, some interesting decisions this game. Not sure, I think I made quite a few mistakes, like that Kyloria, like preventing 1 from Burn Them All and then letting Kyloria hit, I think was pretty costly. The card he drew could have very easily been the Ravenous Rabble, and if that's the case, that was like super bad for us. I'm pretty bad at tracking my opponent's pitch like exactly, and I think that's something I could work on in these sort of fatigue strategies, because if they have like 8 cards left in deck, you probably should know what they are. I'm a lot better at just kind of like seeing what they pitch and knowing it's coming up later. Yeah, so I definitely wanted to showcase this game. I know I posted a Dromai game yesterday, but yesterday I went a more aggressive plan, and today I wanted to showcase the fatigue plan to just show you kind of what it looks like, maybe what indicators in the game you can look out for where you can go, okay, yeah, I want to fatigue this game as opposed to be aggressive. The big ones to look out for is how many cards do they have in their deck and their gloves. Like, because if they have Ghostly Touch, if they had Ghostly Touch this game and got to attack with it once without Phantasm, I think it might have been pretty tough for us. So, yeah, hopefully we learned a little bit from this. I know it was a long one, a long slog. Comment, like, subscribe down below. I always like to hear from you guys. And I will put a deck list in the description. This deck list is a little bit different than the ones I've been playing. If you pay really close attention, you'll notice that the red Buckling Blows turned back into red Chokeslams, and the Buckles turned back into Warmonger's Diplomacy. I just don't think the new mechs are really something worth worrying about. I think they're like fine, but I think with Lexi in the meta, showing up and playing those decks is maybe a little wild. So you probably won't need to worry about them for the ProQuest season, which either starts up this weekend or started up last weekend. Not 100% sure, but we're like right in the thick of it. And I think being prepared for the decks you know you're going to see as opposed to like these new mech decks is probably better. Also, with Warmonger's Diplomacy, I know a lot of people don't think it's quite as good against Lexi anymore because they're on Trench or whatever, but I think they should be on Tunic, and I think a lot of the good players are on Tunic, and it allows you to kind of get them. But not only that, the calling that just happened in Taipei last weekend was won by Azalea, and if a lot of Azalea players kind of saw that and go, okay, I'm going to play Azalea, you're definitely going to want to bring your Warmonger's Diplomacies. So yeah, hope this was a fun one, and I'll see you guys next time.